This is Gerardo Del Real with Resource Stock Digest. Joining me today is the chairman and CEO of Orestone Mining, Mr. David Hottman. David, how are you today?
Very good, Gerardo. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's always a pleasure to be able to highlight a company that checks the multiple boxes that I have when I'm doing due diligence on a company, and I want to get into all of those. And obviously that's going to include the share structure, the management team, the commodity exposure, and a multitude of things. So let's start, though, before we get there, I want to talk a bit about your background and your extensive history of success, and then we'll get into why you decided to come back with Orestone and get the truth machine back out there and try to make the next big discovery. But can we talk a bit first about your background?
Yes. I started in this industry, I guess, primarily as a broker, but that was 35 years ago. In the industry itself, on this side of the fence, I started with Bema Gold Corporation. It no longer exists. The same team is now formed B2 Gold. And then along with one of the founders of Bema, or three of the founders of Bema, we started a company called Eldorado Gold. Eldorado Gold still trades on the New York today. And then after that, in the just around the turn of the century, I started a company called Nevada Pacific Gold with some partners, and that ended up being sold to U.S. Gold, which is now McEwen Mining. And now we're back in it, trying to replicate those successes by finding a big gold and copper porphyry.
When you have a history of this, you mentioned Eldorado Gold and looking over the management team, it seems like you've kind of put the band together, right? You have Bruce Winfield, you have Mark Brown. Can we talk a bit about the team in place? Because this isn't your first go-round looking to make a big discovery or big discoveries. If I'm not mistaken, Bruce Winfield and the team, you guys developed, 5 gold deposits, if my memory serves me right?
Over the years, quite a few, and made numerous discoveries. At Eldorado, it was myself. Basically, I raised the money. Gary Nordine was a founder of both Bema and Eldorado, and he's a geologist that has had extensive success at locating economic deposits, and we've with Gary, been involved in the early days on what have turned out to be 40 to 50 million ounces of gold. Additionally, on the Eldorado team was Mark Brown. He was our controller, and the four of us have worked together in the past. Bruce Winfield was our exploration manager for a time. And so the four of us have worked together on and off for the last 20 or 25 years. In addition to that, on our board of directors, Patrick Daniels started out as a junior engineer at Bema Gold when we were there, and when we'd put our first mine into production, a very small mine up in Idaho. And then Patrick went on to work at Caterpillar and worked with us down in Chile as well in Bema. And then on our advisory board, Julia Espiaga was Bema's country manager and brought several of the target properties into the Bema organization down in Chile. And what has turned out to be 30 million ounces in Chile. So that several of the other members of the board of directors have corporate and financial background. James Anderson has raised a lot of money for juniors and restructured companies as an investment banker and broker. And this is the first time we've worked together on a company, but I've known Jim for over 30 years. And John Kenderka is a good, solid corporate person. He's been involved in starting and building and selling numerous companies over the years.
You mentioned being able to monetize the properties. Your team isn't just great at discovering these projects, but you mentioned obviously Nevada Pacific Gold, which was acquired by what is now McEwen Mining. Wasn't BEMA acquired by Kinross?
Yes, it was. I think that was about a $3 billion deal.
B, not M.
Yeah, exactly. Well, by the time we're done with our careers, it'll probably be T. It'll be trillion. The way that the governments are debasing our currencies around the world, we'll be talking in trillions soon. $1 million for a loaf of bread.
Correct.
So yes, being able to monetize assets or basically get recognition of their value and then have a liquidity event is the business that we're in.
So I have to ask you, David, you have, you've dealt in the billions before, right? When you're monetizing these assets. Orestone, and here's the opportunity. You have a market cap, if I'm not mistaken, fully diluted. I think it's sub 5 million Canadian. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
So why get the band together per se once again and then come back and take on the two projects that you're currently looking to develop? And let's talk about those, one in Canada and one in Chile. Why come back now?
Well, it's because the opportunity is presented. With the 7-8 years of bad market conditions as far as investor interest and thriving metal prices, we find ourselves in a scenario where there are a lot of targets available that have had a lot of work done on them in the past, but people aren't able to raise money and go out and drill them. And true wealth is created at the drill bit. You're just exploiting the wealth when you put a mine into production. And so creating the wealth, we're focused on acquiring projects at a reasonable price. Very little money goes into exploration other than to confirm previous work. And then the bulk of the funds we want to go into the drill bit or the drilling, which is where you create the wealth. A lot of people will get a big property of 1,000 square miles or 100 square miles and try and develop targets and then refine the targets and finally getting around to drilling. What we're trying to do is pick the bullseyes out of that and spend as much money as we can trying to create wealth.
Let's talk about the focus of your efforts right now, the Captain property in British Columbia and the Resguardo project in Chile. I want to start with the Captain property because you had some recent results. Can you give me a brief overview of the property, the recent drilling there, and what the plan is moving forward?
Yes, in a nutshell, it's a district-sized play that has 9 magnetic targets on it. And those targets range in size from 3 by 400 meters to up to 1 by 3 kilometers in length. And basically a whole series of targets. We've proven the concept that there is mineralization, copper and gold mineralization in some of these magnetic anomalies. We're currently permitting another 27 drill holes, which will bring our total to well over 40 drill holes permitted. And at this point in the market cycle, there are a lot of targets, but there's too many targets for us to drill, so we'll be seeking a joint venture, and we're starting to contact major mining companies for that purpose right now. It's 100% owned. There are no royalties on the property. There are no payments on the property, and the property is in good standing with, so to speak, our assessment and whatnot for 3 or 4 years.
Excellent. And you have Mount Milligan, like 30 kilometers to the north, if I'm not mistaken, right, David?
That's correct. Mount Milligan, which was about a 750 million ton ore body of low-grade copper and gold, has been in production for over a decade now, or about a decade, and it probably has another 20 or 30 years left. I mean, maybe it has 40 years left. I'm not really up on it. And then 120 kilometers or 70, 80 miles to the southwest of us, the Blackwater deposit contains about 10 million ounces of gold. So we're in elephant country on that project.
You mentioned Elephant Country. Let's talk about the Resguardo project, which it stands out to me for two reasons. One, the size of the prize could be significant. And B, the second reason is that you can test this relatively inexpensively. Can we talk about Resguardo, the work that's been done there, and the work you anticipate on completing in 2020?
Okay. The Resguardo project was mined earlier in the century. 1 to 7% oxide copper on an open pit basis, and some extensive underground tunneling. And what drew us to the area was that there's an IP anomaly which induced polarization, which indicates that there are metals in the ground that are holding a charge, an electric charge. When you put electricity to them. So basically, you've got outcropping copper mineralization on surface. Our mapping has confirmed that we have numerous structures going through the area, significant regional structures, where some of that previous mining was done, a large IP anomaly. And where you have these big structures in close proximity to this IP anomaly, you have a lot of alteration and copper mineralization at surface. So our target here is a large manto, which is more of a vein that's more on its side, more bedded in sediments, or a porphyry. And both can be quite large, 500 million tons if you're lucky. And we are in Elephant Country. There are 4 deposits within 100 kilometers that are from 1 to 4 billion tons in size. Several of them are in operation. And so what our target is, as I say, a large porphyry that is primarily copper, but we do have up to 0.5 gram of gold in those previous mining operations. So it is, the prize is extremely large.
I couldn't help you emphasizing in the latest news release the importance of the fluid leakage to surface. Can you explain for the average non-geologist why that's so important?
Yes, if you just have, so to speak, solid ground or rock, it takes an awful lot for a lot of time and pressure for solutions to get pushed through solid rock, although it does happen. So in this particular case, you have the rock that is these fault structures allow the fluids to be able to move much more easily, and so it makes our exploration a lot easier when you can actually find the surface expressions and not just rely on the drill bit to take samples. And so the solutions leaking to surface or being pushed to surface in these structures, we believe that they're coming off of this large IP anomaly. And that actually reminds me of something else. In the surface and underground workings, the type of ore body, or the type of ore they were mining, were breccias, skarns, and mantos. All of those take they take a big system with a lot of fluids moving around, a lot of heat, and a lot of pressure. And so where did all of this come from? We believe it's this large IP anomaly with the fluids leaking to surface.
Well said.
Right around it.
Well said, David. What's the next step at Resguardo?
We're preparing to do a drill program. We want to test it relatively cheaply with 3 to 6 drill holes. We'll use reverse circulation because we're still in the, so to speak, the prospecting or exploration phase. So we'll be able to do a drill program for $150,000 to $300,000 US. And if we drill into a big one, maybe you create the tip of the iceberg could be worth $1 billion or two or something like that.
It's a lot of runway between 5 million and $1 billion. I understand that at Resguardo you have an option, a 5-year option to purchase 100%, correct?
Yes, that's correct, and it's a relatively easy option. It's just payments, just cash payments, and there's only a 2,000 meter drill commitment over the life of the contract, and so the next payment is in August of this year, and it's $220,000 US, and so we'll be getting drill results before we have that payment requirement.
Excellent. Well, you have the team. You obviously have a minuscule market cap, making it obviously a bigger opportunity. You have a track record of success. 2 projects. One you're looking for JV partner on. You're talking to the big companies, and the second that'll be drill tested later this year. David, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, that really covers it. It's the philosophical approach. Oh, yes, there is one more thing. We are looking at several other projects or targets that we'd like to acquire. And on our Resguardo property, there is a second target that has started to paint up or be recognized in our geophysics. And so we'll need to do a little bit more geophysics on that before we can drill it. So we've got a lot of targets on both of these projects.
Excellent. David, thank you for your time. I get the feeling we're going to be chatting often. A lot to look forward to in 2020. Thank you again.
I thank you. Have a great day.
You as well.
Okay. Bye-bye.